Welcome back. In the last episode, we explored how natural processes may bring life to minerals through biopoiesis. As I'm writing this, episode 1 is still missing from the series. The order of the episodes is chronological, so I left space for space. This time, we will expand on concepts and elevate the microscopic habitals into the world of the macroscopic. An organism is a habital. Since animal or plant are words I want to avoid using for now. The lines start out blurry. A habital is defined by its habits and its habitat. A macrohabital then would be macroscopic. You could see it with your eyes. Note that many of the terms describing these creatures are unusual. I find language key to immersion, so I made up neologisms or new words to fit everything. Starting us off for this episode, I will dedicate a branch to all microscopic organisms, the Primordius. There are different flavors of Primordius that correspond to features of various groups. Splitting Primordius into its basal groups, one can distinguish between Islar Primordius and Hydroprimordius. Islar Primordius survived its initial challenges on the coasts, tide pools, and shallow silt of bodies of land. Being nearer to the sun exposes them to deadly lasers and radiation, as well as the dangers of desiccation, drying out, and exposure to elements. Hydroprimordius consists of bacteria in small liposomic Varusia ipsia. Whisked by currents and dragged across the ocean's bed, some tough adventurers found themselves spread wide across the planet's surface. With no classical sensory organs, these creatures experience the universe through a series of flavored vibrations. Strong vibrations are deadly, while stable resonances indicate a point of interest. One clade of early Hydroprimordius found a way to abuse the physics engine by transmuting the deadly powerful vibrations of the hot white star into usable energy. Growing in biomass, these Priasts formed their own community centered around the surface of the water column. Other Hydroprimordii, being torn around the chaotic global currents, developed a resistance to help them keep shape and avoid apoptosis, the death of a cell. Proteins produced by Torids enabled them to twist around themselves in an elongated spiral. This spring shape helped keep in regular shape and keep cells close to one another at all times. With consistency in this strategy over time, this clade becomes a discrete member of the Primordii called Toroidoprimordius. All other Hydroprimordius are sequestered into the clade of Primidus. This includes all bacteria, viruses, and other microscopic life that developed in the ocean waters. Some of the planet's life started to blossom on land. As you might expect, these evolved separately from Hydroprimordius. The difference lies in the type of informe from which they emerged. These vats of chemicals by nature live underground. Some of that ground exists on the ocean floor, whereas some develop in the open air, near salty seas and isolated islands. This is where we find our first Islar Primordius members. Ecmoprimordius is named after the ECM that is sparsely found among biofilm on sheets of obsidian arising from volcanic activity. ECM stands for extracellular matrix, a type of biomass consisting of the three-dimensional network of organic material. This is also the first clade that figured out the secret of the first large-scale body. A successful colony can manipulate natural micelles in order to grow an actual membrane, almost like the smallest ever game of Tetris. By extending perpendicularly against gravity, Ecmoprimordii can merge the posterior and anterior ends to become a large body, unencumbered by the restrictions of the square cube law. This law dictates that for every doubling in length, the surface area increases 4-fold and the volume increases 8-fold. That is simply too much laundry for a simple collection of cells to handle. It would also be useless for a single cell to get that big, as it would have to organize all nutrients over a wide area. By staying in a compacted form and paying for WinRAR, the body keeps a vault of useful minerals on hand. Over time, a population of membranous bodies invented a mechanism to share resources more efficiently than passing them around the perimeter like a game of telephone. The problem with that strategy relates to the law of the commons, where the greediest of members take all the resources instead of passing along the torch. On this scale, the problem could be solved with a peristaltic pump. But to combat this population secretes a fluid toward the other cells in the body, trapping it amongst themselves. This gives them an easy, efficient way to share nutrients to the most needy. Because the habits of this population are so distinct from its cousins, it forms a new clade dubbed Ecmoderma, the ECM skin group. Another signature feature of this clade is that the body of Ecmoderma starts as a single cell that replicates itself. It sticks together with glue-like proteins along the transverse axis of each cell. Contrary to the Ecmoderma, a cell could form a mutualistic relationship with neighboring cells. Working together, they adhere in a complex fashion, weaving in and out and forming a body. Completing a body levels these cells up into the category of Symbioprimordius. Bit of a mouthful there. If you think living with a roommate is bad, imagine having to share a body. Characteristics of this clade include separate Primordius colonies merging into a single body. This will allow them to later accomplish feats unheard of in the history of Earth's biosphere. 100 million years, or 2.14 cycles, after the appearance of Symbioprimordius, they form a distinct mother realm named Symbiogena. They are a type of congealed biomat composed of layers. Each layer of biomass serves a function to keep the whole surviving. Underneath the organism are the digestive symbionts that push it along the floor and dissolve smaller biomats with potent, basic, high pH enzymes. They inject the solution into any mass it comes across and dissolves pockets of organic matter to reduce structural integrity of the victim. Chemosynthesis with hydrogen sulfide and various chemicals produced by land-based fumaroles subsisted them. Colony members would process the chemicals into a more usable state for other members, which then produce energy for the entire body, while yet more members provide shelter from radioactivity and heat. Their forms rise and modify through the honing whetstone of time against nature. These curious creatures reproduce via a chemical signaling pathway that stops the maturation of select cell types throughout the body. Then, it runs a reverse development pathway that transforms the cells from specialized types to pluralistic wildcards. These cells would be able to take on any tissue role within the body based on the unique species they originally come from. We can refer to these as gametogens. Such cells generated by the process are wrapped in a sheer sac and expelled within a slate of biofilm in the body's trail. To improve the chances of offspring survival, the creature's trail, while in this cycle, is laced with sodium and chlorine solutions to help the young start to develop. During the regeneration process, symbiogens are in a relatively weakened state and have a high risk of starvation. Symbiogens diverge with body plans following two main habits, a connected habit and a disconnected habit. Splitting on these terms will drive the evolutionary trajectory in different directions. Hold up though, you said Symbiogena was a mother realm? What exactly is that? A mother realm is comparable to the kingdom in Earth's phylogenetic organization known as taxonomic rank. In this project, I decided that the best way to avoid falling into the trap of copying Earth's biosphere is to completely remove myself from common terminology and think in terms linked to Dianthos. A mother realm is a clade that spawns new taxonomic rankings of organisms. Subsets of mother realms are symphonies, which combine orchestras, which are then contrived of sets of ensembles. Members of ensembles can be called motifs, which comprise frequencies. This was a fun idea I'd been playing with to keep the theme around the ethereal nature of evolution. Frequencies, in this case, match up with strategies for living on Dianthos. A combination of body plan with strategies and niches make each frequency unique. For instance, if two like-minded populations developed the same strategy with different body plans, they would still be on different frequencies. Due to the competitive exclusion principle, no two organisms of the same type may rely on the same niche. More specifically, if two species occupy the same ecological niche and compete for the same resources, one will eventually outcompete and eliminate the other. This is also called Gauss's law. Thanks, Georgie. Members of each family or motif will largely have the same habits and explore sub-niches in their environment not already controlled. For example, one can look at the Bilateria, a clade that was not much more than a family in the late Ediacaran, before disaster removed all the factors keeping them from reaching their latent potential. There was not one type of bilateral organism back then, but a plethora to compete against one another and other clades alive at the time. Bilateria itself was an Ediacaran motif. In order to have a more complete picture of the geographical world in this age, I shall describe parts of it to decorate your mindscapes. This age on the planet exists within the 800 million years after the Hadean period, called Biosporepha. Choose some of the key features to investigate next. Good choice. Fumaroles are vents near a volcano that emit hot gases and vapors. Large amounts of them can signal an imminent eruption, but they can also exist at the tail end of a volcano's lifespan. Also, an area containing fumaroles is called a fumarole field. Such structures are fairly present on Dianthos after the Hadean period as the tectonic plates shift. They are commonly found on remote islands and also close to continents. There are many biomes across the planet in this period of Biosporepha. A large crack underneath the ocean that reaches from north to southeast provides an ample environment for hydrothermal forests. It was formed by the splitting of tectonic plates, which allowed magma to rise to the surface. Early in the Hadean, before any oceans were extracted from rocks, a large landmass stuck out above the rest. Over a few eons, gravity and erosion worked to flatten it out into a large butte, 5,000 kilometers in diameter at its largest point. This became a sunken landmass biome called a wet expanse. Under the rising tides, it provides a large, shallow sea for creatures of all kinds. Along coasts, the sulfuric waters chip away at shorelines, leaving rounded features. Where the rock is weak, water erodes softer sand and leaves jagged outcrops of rock. The smooth coasts and jagged coasts provide different habitats for exploring. Whereas jagged coasts provide lots of hiding places for little habitals and hard surfaces to stick to, smooth coasts provide a gentler environment that promotes floating and sliding behaviors. Just inside of the coastline where the wind stream carries storms, there are staccato beaches where acid rain has poked holes into the ground. These beaches farther from bodies of water remain uninhabited, but near the coast provides a location for somatocysts to evolve alongside. Across the above-ground landscapes, there is not much more than rock, sand, and dirt. Dust devils commonly whip up gusts of sand and can occasionally sweep tons of the substance into the air, resulting in huge sandstorms taller than the Burj Khalifa. On land, there are wide, ancient mountain ranges, newer, sharper mountains, incomprehensible rock structures, fjords, chasms, and more. But as life remains underwater for the most part, that is the only area we'll be focusing on for now. Tropical waters differ from polar waters, and they may be counted as biomes in and of themselves. One important environmental factor that separates regions of the water is the light level, so let's split them into tropical photic waters and tropical dark waters, and polar trophic waters and polar dark waters. Light levels are great if you need warmth to live, however dark places are essential for reducing exposure to radiation. These are only some of the biomes on the planet, with more being added to in the future. It's good to have some kind of mental model of the land before we continue. Here we have the fifth and most alien of taxonomic mother realms that emerge upon Dianthos' oceans. Toroids may look very familiar to the microtorids and Torids from before. However, the catch is that these organisms are separated by millions of years of advancement. No longer are they locked to their size by the nature of the Primordius. To keep things straight, the name of the mother realm is Toroid, which refers to the geometric shape, while any individual in the realm can be classified as a Torid. So a drone is a Torid, as well as a septus and a meretric. In a Torid, each cell's RNA chain, normally a tool for various purposes around the cell, coalesces into the center of a community of cells. Squeezed by the pressure of the strong chain, the innermost cells adapted by sacrificing vital capabilities in order to store the chain safely inside them. The inner volume of these central cells are restructured for 90% RNA storage and 10% for all other functionalities. Toroidoprimordius, TP, joins in groups, which become fibers, and then fibers join into orofibers, which are linked together in a large ring. This particular strategy mimics the body plan of Torids, as evolution does not like to diverge from what it's familiar with. The TP simply repeated what made them successful on a larger scale. Toroids, as macrohabitals, exist anywhere from the mesopelagic and bathypelagic zones to the benthic realm along the ocean floor. One key characteristic of the bodies in this clade is the homeomorphic equivalence between its members, apart from short bursts of disjoint behavior. On the extremities of the toroid body plan, cells begin to elongate and form an epidermal tissue of squamous epithelial cells. Over time, they expand into many similar yet behaviorally distinct strategies to combat extinction. Since it is the habits of individuals and behavior of populations that influence the strategies of future generations, the toroids group themselves into many macrohabitable populations. Not enough time has passed to section these habits to symphonies themselves, but you may think of them as select subrealms of the torid line. The first macrohabit to explore is the fibrillated Torid. With their roots deeply ingrained in the ways of Primordius and Toroidoprimordius, the group uses long and short cilia to move themselves around, as well as filtering particles out of the oceans that wash around them. When competition is rare, one must only slightly benefit from an adaptation for it to continue to work. Secondly, turn your attention to the elongated Torid. Using the same strategy as the obsidian biomat-based Ecmoprimordius, these Torids extend themselves after forming their inherent ring to add members en masse to their bodies. More cells doing work usually increases chances of survivability while lowering the chances of starvation. In times of recession, the elongated Torids can consume their own bodies and recycle the nutrients and lipids from the membrane and organelles. Branching from the same line as the elongated Torids leads us to the corrugated Torids. You can't tie your hair up with these, unfortunately. Utilizing the weaknesses of elongated Torids, the members of this group can fold over their own bodies and create a tight spring that reduces their overall size while keeping the same surface area. Powered proton pumps in this membrane create unequal ion voltages that allow the external membrane to reform its default shape. Moving on, a simple yet effective body plan belongs to the funnellated Torids. When compatible simple toroid bodies come together, with their adhesive tissues oriented just right, a superorganism can emerge from the chaos. Funnellated Torids also retain cilia from their ancient ancestors and focus their usage into the center of their donut hole. Stacking together, they form a massive filtering structure almost 10 centimeters in height. These guys sit on the sandy floor and filter out marine snow from dead and dying organisms and biochemical matter descending from the water's surface. These took a couple of cycles to form after the standard Torids, as they had adapted to the near-freezing temperatures of water in the benthic. However, some FTs found it easier to adapt to warm, shallow waters where there's less danger, but also less food. Helical Torids are another member of the Mother Realm that survive along the floor. Their unique twisted shape, inherited from their Toroidoprimordius ancestors, allowed them to form a shovel-type morphology. They can twist and contort their homeomorphic toroidal shape to crawl along the sandy floor, displacing a varied amount of debris and dirt under the chaotic tides. An ecological miracle, as most of the sediment deposited to the floor is buried where they cannot be used and recycled by any of the life currently existent on the planet. Next, and perhaps the strangest of the toroid colonies, we introduce the linked Torids. Instead of relying on adhesive stacking like with the funnellated types, the Torids of this group combine instead with the equivalent of a hug when faced with the challenge of competition from toroid relatives. The linked Torids release a chemical signal into their body to capture their enemy. Disjointing from their casual strategy of being a ring, linked Torids unbind and take the form of a spring, initiating a jousting match. The winner takes control of the opposition's body and adds it to their collection of trophies. The loser's body is overrun by the basic chemical immune system of their captor, and all traces of its unique biology are wiped out, becoming a clean slate for the winner to take control. The inner fluid is rinsed with familiar, fatty biochemical markers of the captor, who devours and recycles the nutrients. The seventh and final grouping of toroids is rarely found in nature. Instead of a typical cylindrical form factor wrapped around itself and meeting end to end, the Mobius Torids are flat, with a single twist around its latitude, combining the ventral and dorsal sides into one long line. It is not fully understood the benefits of such a position other than being able to meet with food or foe with the same side at any given time. Who needs a 3D perception of the world when you can see it all from a single plane? Hello everybody, if you found this video enjoyable or if you like the topic in general, go ahead and give me some thumbs down below the video. And if you really like it, tell your friends about it. I don't really care if you subscribe, but you should probably be doing that anyway. If you want to buy me a coffee, I set up a coffee. And since I split this one hour-long video into 3 separate videos, you can go ahead and look forward to premiering next week. Same time, same day, Friday. We're going to be doing more. Bye-bye.